Hey, I'm Madison Taylor, 35 years old and the CEO of TechVision Enterprises. But let me take you back because this version of me, she didn't exist 12 years ago. Back then, I was just a broke college student trying to survive. I'll never forget the day my parents sold my Honda Civic, the one thing I truly loved, without even telling me. "Your car just paid for his future," Mom said, beaming as she handed my brother his MBA acceptance letter. That moment still stings. Especially now, every time I see his name sitting at the top of an executive job application right there on my fancy mahogany desk. There are no cozy family pictures in my office. Just awards and that hard-earned CEO nameplate that took years of grit and sacrifice to get. If you've ever given up something for your family while watching them get handed the easy road, leave a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that subscribe button too, because you're gonna want to hear what happened when my brother showed up in my boardroom expecting a dream job. I grew up in Elmhurst, a quiet suburb just west of Chicago. Our house on Berkshire Lane had 4 people under one roof, but it always felt like everything revolved around 3. Or really just one: my brother Jason. From day one it was clear. He was the golden child. My dad worked steady as a middle manager at an insurance company, and my mom was an elementary school admin, both good, hardworking people. But emotionally, their attention wasn't spread equally. I still remember my 10th birthday. They gave me a practical gift, a set of encyclopedias. 3 months earlier, Jason turned 8 and got a full-blown backyard party, magician and all. Mom even baked a custom Batman cake from scratch, spent 2 whole days on it. Yeah, I noticed. And school stuff? Even worse. My dad would rearrange important meetings just to sit in the stands at Jason's little league games, where he mostly sat on the bench. Meanwhile, I made it all the way to state with my debate team and got a quick "sorry, can't make it" text. But I didn't let the favoritism break me. I poured my energy into school. Straight A's, honors classes, all STEM. I found peace and purpose in learning, especially tech. Sophomore year it really clicked, thanks to Mrs. Abernathy, my computer science teacher. She saw something in me. With her support, I built a basic inventory system for the school's science lab. It wasn't fancy, but it worked, and for the first time, someone outside my family actually saw me. I even got a little award for it. When I told my parents I made the principal's list, their response was a distracted, "That's nice, honey," before diving right back into Jason's tutoring schedule, C++ and algebra, the works. They were all in, setting up reward charts and high fives for the tiniest bit of effort on his part. My 16th birthday didn't come with a party or a big celebration. Instead, it gave me something better: independence. I landed my first job at CompT, a local electronics store. I was working 20 hours a week while still keeping up a perfect GPA. Every paycheck was split between 2 goals: college savings and a car fund. Meanwhile, Jason just coasted through high school with a steady C average. Yet somehow he was always being cheered on for turning in homework on time. "School just isn't his thing," Dad would say at family dinners, "but he's a born leader." Apparently, those leadership skills translated to becoming beer pong champ at weekend parties I skipped so I could pick up extra shifts. After 18 months of working late nights, missing hangouts, and packing PB&Js for lunch, I finally saved enough to buy a used 2001 Honda Civic. It had 87,000 miles and a pearl white finish, nothing fancy, but it was mine. That little car was every early morning inventory shift, every weekend I stayed late, all rolled into 4 wheels and freedom. The day I brought it home, Mom asked if I'd let Jason borrow it for his dates. "You know, girls notice these things," she said with a wink. I smiled but said no. That was one of the first real boundaries I ever set. Senior year came around and the college acceptance letters started rolling in. I got into several state schools with partial merit scholarships and ended up choosing the University of Illinois for its amazing computer science program. When I shared the news, Mom and Dad said congrats in passing and gave me $500 to help with expenses. Then, just a few months later, Jason graduated barely and got into Northern Illinois University. My parents threw a full-on backyard barbecue, invited all the relatives, and handed him a $3,000 check. I asked why he got so much more support, and Mom just said, "Your brother needs a little more help adjusting to college life." That summer, before I left for school, I found an unexpected ally: Grandma. My grandma, my mom's mom, was one of the few people who really saw what was going on in our family. Every week, we'd meet at the Elmhurst Diner for lunch. Over grilled cheese and milkshakes, she'd quietly slip a $50 or $100 bill into my hand and whisper, "Just for books," with a wink that said she knew exactly what I needed. On our last lunch before I left for college, she smiled across the table, cherry pie a la mode between us, and said, "You've got something special, Maddie. Don't let anyone dim that light, not even family." Her words stayed with me as I packed up my beat-up Honda Civic that August morning. I remember glancing in the rearview mirror, my parents standing in the driveway, waving with half-hearted smiles before turning back inside to help Jason pick out his college courses. College felt like stepping into another world. There was freedom, yes, but also some tough moments. I'd chosen computer science, and as a freshman girl in a mostly male program, we were barely 18% of the department. I felt the weight of it immediately. But then I met Alyssa, my roommate with bright pink hair and big opinions about gender equality. She was a journalism major and didn't hold back. From day one, she had my back. When I vented about how professors would skip over me or how guys in group projects assumed I couldn't code, she just shrugged and said, "Keep out coding them. They'll come around." And she was right. By second semester, I got invited to join a top-tier coding group after I built an algorithm that simplified their entire workflow. It felt like proof that I belonged, even if it didn't always feel that way. Money, though? That was a constant stress. My scholarship only covered tuition. Rent, books, food, that was all on me. I worked 3 jobs just to keep my head above water. Early mornings at the campus coffee shop, weekend shifts at the IT help desk, and late-night food deliveries for a local sandwich place. My little Civic became my lifeline. It got me to class, to work, to study groups. Sleep barely existed. But somehow I kept my grades up and paid the bills just barely. Then came sophomore year, and with it, a shot at this elite summer internship. It was a huge opportunity, but the prep was intense. One morning, after pulling an all-nighter for midterms, I finally crashed for an hour only to be woken up at 7:43 a.m. by my phone buzzing. Home was calling. The morning started with Mom's voice way too bright for 8 a.m. "Great news, Madison. Jason got into Northwestern's MBA program." She was practically buzzing. I managed a quiet congrats. Honestly happy for him, even though things between us were complicated. But then she hit me with it. "We need to talk about how you can help with his tuition." Wait, what? I was barely awake, trying to process what she just said. There was no way they meant me, the daughter juggling part-time jobs and student debt to chip in for my brother's elite grad school bill. Then Dad jumped in, calm and collected, like this was some business deal. He started going on about family sacrifices and investing in Jason's future. I said, "Fine, let's talk when I visit this weekend." I figured we'd sit down and come up with some logical, fair options. 3 days later, after a long, quiet drive, I pulled into the driveway and immediately felt something was off. My usual parking spot? Empty. Inside, Mom was cheerfully making Jason's favorite lasagna, while Dad lounged watching basketball. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. Then, at dinner, right between bites like it was no big deal, Dad said, "Sold the Honda. Got a decent price for it, too." I froze. "Wait, my car? You sold my car." The fork dropped from my hand. The room spun. Mom didn't even flinch. She just waved it off and said words that I'll never forget. "Your car paid for his future, Madison. Don't be selfish." Jason, silent, just staring at his garlic bread like it held the meaning of life. Dad tried to explain it away with some business speak about family investments and long-term gains. Oh, and apparently the car was technically in his name for insurance reasons, even though every single payment came from my paycheck. No heads up. No asking. No warning. They sold my car behind my back to pay for my brother's dream. And all I could think was, how the hell am I supposed to keep my jobs without a way to get there? When things got tough, Mom suggested I just take the campus bus. Dad mumbled something vague about how this would build character. And Jason, when I finally asked for his thoughts, he just shrugged and said, "Thanks, I guess," before asking for seconds at dinner. That night, I cried alone in my old bedroom, not just over the car, but over what it symbolized. It wasn't just about losing something I'd worked hard for. It was the feeling of being completely dismissed, like my choices, my sacrifices, and my dreams didn't matter. The next morning, Mom flipped pancakes like nothing had happened, chatting about my classes and carefully avoiding any mention of the Honda. It stung, the silence, the pretending. Called Alyssa my rock. She listened while I sobbed through the story. And when I was done, she didn't try to sugarcoat anything. "You don't owe them your independence," she said, her voice steady. "This isn't okay." They crossed a line. Before heading back to campus, I made a decision, one that felt both terrifying and freeing. I told my parents I was done discussing money with them. I wouldn't accept help and I wouldn't ask for it either. That chapter was closed. On the bus ride back, watching raindrops slide down the Greyhound window, I sat in silence, not sad exactly, but raw. I made quiet promises to myself that day. Promises about the kind of woman I'd grow into, what I'd tolerate, what I'd never let happen again. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the glass faint, flickering in the blur of Midwest towns and endless fields. That ride didn't just take me back to school. It took me into a new version of myself. The next few months were a crash course in survival. I lost my flexible food delivery job. No car meant no way to do it. But I picked up extra early shifts at the campus coffee shop, thanks to a kind manager who understood my situation. My life turned into a tight, demanding routine. For 30 a.m. alarm, on the campus shuttle by 5:15, working until 9:50, sprinting across the quad to make my 10 a.m. data structures class. Laundry happened at 2 a.m. when the machines were finally free. Grocery runs became a weekly mission. Alyssa would drive us in her dented old Toyota, making sure I had what I needed. And in the middle of all that chaos, someone unexpected showed up for me during advanced systems architecture. Professor Winters, this sharp, no-nonsense woman with silver hair and that classic Silicon Valley energy, asked me to stay after class one day. I remember my stomach tightening a little. I thought I was in trouble. But instead, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Your project on algorithm optimization? It's got real potential. Like market-level potential." Then she slid a business card across the desk. "A former colleague of mine works at Nexus Innovations. They run a summer internship. It pays, they provide housing, and I think you should apply." That moment, it honestly changed everything for me. Getting into Nexus wasn't easy. There were 5 intense interview rounds and even a live coding challenge that had me sweating bullets. But when the acceptance email finally landed in my inbox, I celebrated with a bowl of instant ramen, and this time I added real veggies. Felt like luxury. Mom would call every now and then, but our chats were awkward. Surface level. She mentioned that Jason was finding his MBA program challenging, and that he had to cut back on his social life to study. I almost laughed. Most grad students I knew didn't have much of a social life to begin with, but I bit my tongue. That internship at Nexus completely shifted the course of my career. Their office was in this stunning high-rise in downtown Chicago, and I got placed on the mobile platform development team. I dove in hard, and before long, I was spotting ways to make their code run smoother. Pretty soon, senior devs were asking for me by name to help with the more complex stuff. And by the end of the summer, the CTO pulled me aside and asked if I'd consider staying on remotely through my senior year. I said yes. Graduation came fast. It was a mix of pride and something heavier. My parents and Jason showed up late, 20 minutes, to be exact, and left right after the ceremony. Jason had some important networking event he couldn't miss. What really hurt was not seeing Grandma Eleanor. She'd passed away that winter. I still remember how she used to tell me, "You've got something special, Maddie. Don't let anyone, not even family, make you feel small." She left me a small inheritance, and my parents immediately suggested we use it to help Jason get a proper wardrobe for his post-MBA interviews. I stayed quiet. That conversation didn't deserve my energy. The real graduation gift came in the form of an email. A full-time offer from Innosphere, a major tech firm in San Francisco, known for cutting-edge cloud innovations. The starting salary made my jaw drop. Sure, living in the Bay Area isn't cheap, but still I had made it. On my own. With nothing but a few cardboard boxes filled with my stuff, I got on a plane to California, ready to start over. I was leaving behind the Midwest, the place that shaped me but also nearly broke me. Landing in San Francisco felt like stepping into a whole new world. The energy was different, fast, intense, full of possibility. My tiny studio in the Tenderloin barely fit a bed and a desk, but it was walking distance from Innosphere's office on Market Street. That alone made it feel like the right move. Work hit me like a wave. The pace, the pressure, the politics, it was all a lot. I was learning fast, both technically and socially. My manager, Vivian, saw that I was good at what I did, But during my first review, she gently pointed out something important. You're talented, but you isolate. Relationships move your career forward, not just code. That stuck with me. So I pushed myself. I started showing up to happy hours, to meetups, to those awkward icebreaker lunches. Slowly, I started building real connections with people across the company. Then 9 months in, everything changed. We hit a huge roadblock on a project involving a newly acquired company. Everyone was stuck, even the senior devs. While they kept spinning in circles, I spent the weekend quietly building a middleware solution, just me, my laptop, and a lot of coffee. On Monday morning, I presented it. Our CTO loved it. The code was clean, simple, and it worked. That one moment fast-tracked me to a senior developer role. That Christmas, I flew home, and honestly, it was tough. My mom had Jason's MBA graduation photos all over the house, and my parents couldn't stop talking about the executive jobs he deserved. Meanwhile, Jason was complaining about how companies weren't offering him high enough titles. I have an MBA from Northwestern, he kept saying, as if that should be enough. It was wild to see the contrast. He expected success. I was building mine from the ground up. Back in San Francisco, I used that frustration as fuel. I raised my hand for harder projects. I made sure I was visible. I wanted leadership not for the title, but because I knew I could handle it. 14 months later, I became a team lead. 6 developers. One messy, behind-schedule project. It wasn't easy, but through smart planning, honest check-ins, and a lot of late nights, we pulled it off 3 days ahead of deadline. That moment cemented my place. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was leading. There was a time I could barely get a group project to run smoothly. Now, I was leading teams and turning things around. I still remember New Year's Day, standing by the window in my slightly bigger apartment, watching fireworks burst over the bay. For the first time, I let myself really take in how far I'd come and quietly admitted I wanted even more. The next few years moved fast. I wasn't just getting better at the technical stuff, I was learning how to lead. Real leadership, the kind that lifts people up. Eventually, Innisphere promoted me to development manager. I was in charge of 3 teams, 22 engineers total, and fun fact, the youngest person in the company's history to ever hold that position. But I didn't just want to manage, I wanted to build something different. My leadership style focused on 2 things, being excellent at what we do and being human while doing it. I created a space where people could speak up, try things, even mess up without fear. And you know what? It worked. Our numbers beat every other division, and suddenly, higher-ups were paying attention. Along the way, my look grew up too. I swapped out the college hoodies for sharp blazers, but I never gave up my bold glasses or my signature emerald green, my little confidence boost in color form. Eventually, I earned the corner office with a city view. Dreamy, right? But with it came a non-stop schedule. Team huddles, strategy sessions, client pitches, and fires to put out. All the time. Personal life? Practically non-existent. I briefly dated Daniel, the marketing director. Sweet guy. But after yet another canceled dinner and one too many late-night code reviews, he told me gently, "You're married to your work, I can't compete." And honestly, he was right. I made a choice, and I don't regret it. Then came the project that changed everything. Global bank, huge financial services firm, reached out with a wild request. They needed to move decades of old-school systems to the cloud, and they wanted it done in 6 months. Most people said it couldn't be done. I didn't say no. Instead, I pulled together a dream team from different departments, and we mapped out a strategy that hit the ground running, secure, smart, and fast. We pulled it off. On time. And when the news broke, it turned heads. Tech magazines covered it. Case studies were written. And that project, it launched me into a whole new league. The first person who really noticed me was Aleliana Vega, the Chief Innovation Officer at Tech Vision Enterprises, one of those big-name Fortune 500 companies based in Chicago. Her LinkedIn message was short and straight to the point. "We need your kind of innovation. Let's talk." What followed was 8 intense weeks of interviews, 7 rounds to be exact. And at the end of it, they offered me a position that doubled my salary. It was a massive opportunity, but also meant packing up my life in California, leaving behind a network I'd spent years building, and moving back to the Midwest closer to the family I'd intentionally kept some distance from. Still, the role was too good to pass up. So by June, I was settling into a high-rise apartment in downtown Chicago, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of Lake Michigan that honestly took my breath away. Tech Vision's headquarters? A sleek glass tower that stretches across 30 floors. From up there, you don't just see the city, you feel like you're part of something powerful. As the Director of Strategic Innovation, I reported directly to Leliana. I was in charge of a team of 65 across product, design, and development, way bigger than anything I'd led at Innosphere. Every decision I made now touched thousands of employees and reached millions of customers. It was thrilling. It was exhausting. I was working 14-hour days, sometimes weekends too. But it was worth it. Word started to spread inside the company, the girl who was shaking things up. We modernized old systems and launched bold new products. The results spoke for themselves. 3 straight quarters of revenue growth, all driven by innovation. Back home, though, things stayed distant. My mom would call now and then, usually with some update about Jason still out of work, still being picky, as she put it. 3 years out of his MBA, and he was still passing on jobs he thought were beneath him. They had even refinanced their house to support him. Mom shared this casually, like it was no big deal, not even realizing how sharply it contrasted with how I'd been treated. Then one day everything shifted again. Leliana announced she was retiring. And not long after, I got a lunch invitation from Tech Vision's CEO, Vincent Armstrong himself. We were at Chicago's ultra-exclusive Everest Club, and he barely looked up from the wine list when he said it. We're looking at internal candidates for Chief Innovation Officer. Your track record is impressive, but some board members are unsure because of your age. I was 33. If I got the role, I'd be the youngest executive in company history and one of the very few women in that tier. I took a breath, stayed calm, and said what I knew to be true. Results should matter more than age. Then I laid out my vision for where we could take our tech strategy. 2 weeks later, it was official. The promotion made headlines, lots of buzz about rising tech leaders and women breaking the digital ceiling. My new office was on the 42nd floor. The view was stunning. The pressure? Intense. At the same time, the company launched a massive restructure. That meant making hard calls, reorganizing teams, cutting some projects, pushing others forward. I was clocking 80-hour weeks, juggling the day-to-day with big-picture strategy and keeping the board happy. Little by little, my body started waving the red flag. I got sick constantly, colds that wouldn't quit, zero quality sleep, and meals that were mostly lukewarm takeout eaten in front of spreadsheets. It all came to a head during a major board presentation. Midway through, I started to feel dizzy. I held onto the podium, determined to get through it, but the room started spinning. Later, I saw the security footage. I finished the presentation, then collapsed. Not exactly graceful. Turns out I was severely dehydrated and completely exhausted. They kept me overnight at the hospital, hooked up to fluids while my phone lit up nonstop, Slack messages, email alerts, project updates, and a flood of "Are you okay?" texts. One message stopped me cold. Vincent Armstrong, our current CEO, had requested a video call. I figured he was about to say something about how my health might be affecting my performance. Instead, he surprised me. The board held an emergency meeting, he said, and we're unanimously recommending you for CEO when I step down next quarter. He paused, then added, honestly, we were all worried when you fainted. But watching you power through that presentation first, that showed us the kind of dedication this company needs. I knew I needed to get better fast. But before I even fully recovered, the topic of succession planning came up. Classic, right? When I left the hospital, the discharge papers came with a stack of advice. Manage stress, find balance, prioritize rest. I skimmed it all and quietly filed it away with every other well-meaning suggestion I never had time for. But then Vincent dropped a bomb, something that made me stop and really think. Was this lifestyle even sustainable anymore? Honestly, could I even handle being CEO when just managing my CIO role had literally knocked me out cold? I knew the process of choosing a successor wasn't going to be easy. It would mean close scrutiny from the board, shareholders, even the media. One sign of weakness, like say collapsing in the middle of it, could ruin everything I'd worked for. So reluctantly, I made some big changes. I built myself a recovery routine and actually stuck to it. 8 solid hours of sleep every night, working out 3 times a week with a trainer who specializes in executive health, yes, that's a thing, and wild concept, taking real lunch breaks away from my desk. I even gave Rachel, my assistant, the green light to enforce these rules like a drill sergeant. Even when I tried to push back, the CEO selection committee wasn't exactly a laid-back group. 7 board members including 2 former CEOs of TechVision and reps from major investment firms. The evaluation was intense. Formal interviews, strategy presentations, even psychological testing to see how we handled pressure. My biggest competition? The COO of a major rival and a well-known industry exec with decades of experience. Basically heavy hitters. In round 2 it became clear what they were worried about. One board member, Lawrence Thornton, straight up asked if I had the maturity and life experience for the role. Let's be honest, it was a nice way of saying you're too young and you're a woman. But instead of getting defensive, I leaned into the facts. I walked them through the data, the transformations I led, the results we hit quarter after quarter. Performance speaks louder than birthdays, I said, looking each one of them in the eye. Then came the big moment, our final presentations. Each candidate had to lay out their 10-year vision for TechVision. The others played it safe, suggesting small tweaks and slow growth. When I pitched my ideas, I didn't hold back. I shared a bold vision for where digital innovation could take us, but I also grounded it in real, doable steps. It wasn't just about dreaming big. It was about making it happen. I backed it all up with solid numbers, clear paths to growth, and fresh ways to push boundaries. 2 days later, Vincent called me. His voice was calm but excited. The board just voted. It's unanimous. You're in. Just like that, I became the youngest CEO in TechVision's 60-year history, and the first woman to ever lead the company. The news spread fast. Suddenly, I was in business headlines, tech magazine features, and getting invites to speak at big events. The Chicago Business Journal ran a piece titled, "Tech Visionary at 34, Madison Taylor Shatters the Corporate Ceiling." It was wild. The article went deep into my career wins but left out my personal story, which was exactly how I wanted it. Then came a surprise. The day after that article dropped, my mom called. "We saw your picture in the paper," she said kind of awkwardly. "Your dad and I were really proud." Hearing that, it hit different. Felt good but also strange. Like, why now? Why not before? We kept the conversation short and polite, but let's be real, years of unspoken stuff hung in the silence when we hung up. My first 100 days as CEO were a total whirlwind. I had to earn trust fast, set the tone, share my vision, and build solid relationships across the company. I was in back-to-back meetings with department heads, top clients, and investors. Each one needed a tailored message, but all of it had to stay rooted in the same core strategy. Honestly, that pace could have knocked me out again if it weren't for Rachel, my lifesaver of an assistant. She made sure I had breathing room moments to recharge between the heavy stuff. And then out of nowhere came another message. This one wasn't from a client or journalist. It was from Jason. After 3 years of total silence. "Congrats on becoming CEO," he wrote. "That's huge. I'd love to catch up sometime." It ended with his phone number, and a kind of humility I didn't expect from him. I just sat there reading it over. Part of me was curious. Part of me was tired. After everything, I wasn't sure what kind of response, if any, felt right. In the end, professionalism won out. I suggested we meet for lunch at Riverview. It's a classy but not too fancy spot near headquarters. The kind of place where the background chatter gives you just enough privacy. When Jason showed up 15 minutes late, by the way, he was wearing a crisp, obviously brand new designer suit. He looked polished, sure, but also jittery. You could feel the nervous energy coming off him as he walked up to my table. We kicked things off with the usual small talk, Chicago's unpredictable weather, all the new stuff popping up downtown. Then, right in the middle of reading the menu, he dropped the real reason for the meetup. "I've been thinking about a career shift," he said, pretending to focus on the entrees. "I've always been drawn to corporate strategy. And honestly, TechVision's innovation work? Super impressive." That's when it clicked. This wasn't about catching up. It was networking wrapped in the disguise of a family reunion. Instead of calling it out, I stayed polite, kept it professional, asked about his experience and future plans like I would with any other acquaintance. But as he talked, it became clear: short stints, sideways job moves, flashy titles that didn't really match the role. All at smaller and smaller companies. Once our coffee arrived, he finally said it out loud. TechVision's strategic planning team would be perfect for someone like me. Think you could put in a word? I kept my tone steady, warm but firm. Explained how we hire everything goes through a fair, structured process. If he was truly interested, I told him he should apply like everyone else, based on merit. He looked a little let down for half a second, then snapped right back, full of confidence, like his resume was a guaranteed golden ticket. 2 weeks later, Rachel dropped the usual stack of daily files on my desk. One of them included applications that needed my review. And guess whose name popped up? Jason. He'd actually applied for a senior-level strategy role, one that asked for at least 15 years of solid experience. He had maybe 5 scattered and inconsistent. HR had no idea we were related, different last names. He'd taken our stepdads in college. I kept our dads. So his application made it through, totally by the book. Technically, I should have handed it off to the department head like we do with every other candidate. But curiosity got the best of me. Maybe even a little lingering resentment. I wanted to see how this would play out. I decided to schedule the interview myself. Not exactly standard practice, I'll admit, but it felt like something I needed to do. A way to finally close that chapter. I told Rachel to set it up first thing in the morning and handle it herself. No one needed to know the backstory. And the boardroom felt like the perfect setting, neutral, professional, no distractions. Just 2 versions of the same past meeting face to face in a moment we both probably saw coming. That night, while reviewing the company's quarterly projections, my mind kept wandering. I couldn't stop thinking about the meeting coming up. What was I actually hoping to get out of it? Was it justice? Closure? Maybe just being seen for who I really am now? Honestly, I didn't have a clear answer. Outside, the Chicago skyline was glowing, lights slowly flickering on as the sky faded into evening. Then came Tuesday with that classic spring chaos Chicago's known for. One minute there was sunshine, the next a downpour. Rain streaked across the big glass windows in TechVision's lobby as I walked in, steady and calm. I got to the executive conference room a full 15 minutes early on purpose. I chose the chair facing the door. I wanted to see his face the second he walked in. Rachel had already set everything up. Water pitchers, neat little notepads, printed portfolios. The usual. There was even that tiny but very intentional detail, the interviewer's chair sitting just a bit higher than the guests. At exactly 9 a.m., Rachel's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Parker has arrived for his interview, Miss Taylor." I kept my voice even. "Send him in." And then came Jason. The second he stepped into the room, I watched his face go through a full emotional roller coaster. First that same old confidence. Then confusion. Just one interviewer? Recognition started to set in, and finally total shock. "Madison? You're doing the interview." His voice shook a little. He didn't move. I gave him a cool, polite smile. "Please have a seat, Mr. Parker," I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. "According to your resume, you're interested in the strategic planning director role." Watching him try to gather himself was, I'll admit, oddly satisfying. After years of seeing him coast on charm and borrowed credit, this was a shift. He sat down stiffly, adjusted his tie, same nervous habit our dad used to have when he was cornered. The interview started normally. I asked about his background, his experience. He gave the kind of over-polished answers you'd expect from someone who had memorized business buzzwords, but didn't really live them. I stayed professional, but I pressed deeper. Every vague phrase he tossed out, synergistic leadership, strategic implementation, I countered with, "Can you give me a specific example?" Or, "What were the actual results?" You could feel the energy shift. The confidence started to fade. About 40 minutes in, I decided to stop tiptoeing. "Your resume says you've had 15 years of progressive leadership experience," I said calmly. "But your work history shows about 5 years of employment and some major gaps. Would you like to explain that?" That hit him hard. All the smooth-talking charm drained away. He looked me in the eye and said, "Look, Madison, we both know this situation is kind of weird, right?" I said, finally breaking the tension. "Maybe before we dive into what's next, we should talk about our past." That simple shift opened the door to the real conversation, the one we'd been avoiding. I quietly slid my interview notes aside and gave him a small nod, letting my usual professional mask drop just a little. "Our history matters here," I told him. "So let me ask you something, Jason. Did you know they sold my car to help pay for your MBA? That hit him like a jolt. He blinked fast, clearly stunned. They told me you were okay with it, he said, confused, like he was trying to do the math in his head. That's not what happened, I said, keeping my voice calm, even though the memory still stung. Then I laid it all out the way I found out after the fact, how my concerns were brushed off, and what it felt like to be stuck without a car, juggling jobs, and grinding through college on foot while he was flying first class through grad school. As I talked, I saw the shift in his face, less defensive, more uneasy. He wasn't trying to argue. He was listening. I had no idea, he finally said, staring down at his perfectly polished nails. They always said you didn't need anything. You were the strong one. And you, I said quietly, needed everything handed to you. I wasn't trying to be cruel. But the resentment was there, and I couldn't fully hide it. Still, instead of snapping back, his shoulders sank. And what he said next, honestly, I didn't expect it. I've never lived up to what they gave me, he said softly. He looked embarrassed. That MBA from Northwestern opened a ton of doors. But every time I walked through one, I fell flat. Couldn't keep the job. Couldn't fake the instinct. Whatever you have, it just comes naturally to you. That moment cracked something open. For almost an hour, we dropped all the surface level stuff and talked about growing up, about what it did to us, about the pressure we were each carrying in completely different ways. Jason admitted they'd still been helping him, even in his 30s, paying his rent when he was unemployed, co-signing on a luxury car so he'd look successful at interviews. It wasn't support, it was enablement. And it had chipped away at his confidence, made him reliant, while convincing him he was owed success instead of learning how to earn it. I'm drowning in expectations I never asked for, he said. And then there's you doing it all on your own. Something shifted for me in that moment. The tension between us, the old scorecard, it faded a bit. I still knew deep down he wasn't ready for the role. He didn't have the experience or the grit it required. But for the first time, I saw someone who could grow if he stopped trying to live up to someone else's version of success. This conversation didn't change the outcome, but it changed something between us. Everything shifted the moment Rachel's voice crackled through the intercom, tight with urgency. Miss Taylor, we've got a situation. It's unexpected. Her tone instantly told me this wasn't the usual kind of interruption. I pressed the button. What's going on, Rachel? There are 2 visitors in the lobby, she said carefully. They're asking to see you. No appointment. Security's been notified. The way she said it, calm but cautious, hinted that this was sensitive. Who are they? A Mr. and Mrs. Parker. They say they're family. They got upset when they found out Mr. Parker was interviewing here. Jason and I locked eyes, both of us stunned. Neither of us had anything to do with this sudden parental ambush. I've got it, I told Rachel as I stood, smoothing out my charcoal pencil skirt and mentally bracing myself. Please take Mr. Parker to my private office and bring the visitors to the executive conference room. Jason looked just as confused as I felt, trying to make sense of it all. Did you tell them about the interview? I asked, grabbing my notes. Of course not, he said, shaking his head. I haven't involved them in anything work-related for years. I had over a decade of experience navigating all kinds of tough, awkward meetings, but nothing, and I mean nothing, had prepared me for what it felt like to watch my parents walk into my executive conference room like nervous guests. Dad, usually so self-assured, looked smaller somehow, like the corporate polish of Tech Vision made his department store blazer feel completely out of place. The Chicago humidity hadn't helped either. Mom clutched her purse like it might run away, her eyes darting everywhere before landing on me with a mix of pride and nerves. Madison, she started, unsure. We saw Jason going into the building this morning. We were supposed to meet him for lunch, but we got here early. Dad jumped in, trying to play it cool. You've built quite the place here, Maddie. Security didn't even believe we were your parents, he added with a half laugh that didn't land the way he hoped. His attempt at small talk hung in the air, awkward and heavy with history. Mom stepped closer, her voice softening even though we were already alone. We didn't know Jason was interviewing here. He's been so focused on doing everything on his own lately. The irony hit hard, so hard I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because this whole moment was just so much. And right outside the glass doors, security stood quietly, pretending not to notice. She reached for my hand totally unexpected, and definitely crossing the line we'd all silently agreed to keep professional. Then with a quiet glance around the sleek high-rise boardroom, she leaned in and said softly, "Being here seeing all this makes me realize how much we underestimated you." Across the table my dad sat like a statue, upright, stiff, prideful. You could literally see the war going on behind his eyes. Pride wrestling with decades of stubbornness. The silence was thick, awkward, until my mom broke it with words I never thought I'd hear. "I'm sorry about your car, Madison," she whispered, her voice cracking a little. "It was wrong. I've regretted it for years." I didn't even have time to react to process this long overdue apology before the conference room door creaked open. Jason stepped in, hesitating like he wasn't sure if he was welcome. And just like that, for the first time in nearly 5 years, we were all in one room. My dad's expression shifted the moment he saw him, jaw tight, eyes cold. Whatever was going on between them, it ran deeper than I'd realized. All of it, the awkwardness, the tension, the unresolved mess, suddenly felt way too big to handle in a boardroom where I was supposed to be the boss, not the daughter. So I made a call, the kind of call you learn to make as a CEO. "This isn't the time or place," I said calmly, standing up. "We need privacy and we won't get it here. Let's continue this conversation tonight at my place." I nodded toward the door, a gentle but firm signal that I was setting the boundary. This was my space, my moment, and I was reclaiming it. "Rachel will text you the address." 7 p.m. They left, the door clicking shut behind them. And for a brief moment, I stood alone, surrounded by polished glass and quiet hums of city power, feeling the weight of old family scars and new responsibilities pressing in from both sides. That night was different. For the first time ever, we sat at a table as 4 adults. No pretending. No polite masks. Just us, a fractured family trying to find footing on neutral ground. My penthouse, with its sweeping views of downtown Chicago, gave us just that: space, perspective, and a weird kind of peace. I'd brought in a private chef to keep us from hiding behind "who's doing the dishes?" distractions. So with no escape routes, conversation became our only option. We started safe weather, architecture, random updates on distant cousins. But eventually, I gently guided us to where we needed to go. Jason's application showed some pretty big gaps for the role he applied for, I said, voice calm but direct. But during our talk, I did see potential enough to recommend a starting position as a strategic analyst. With training and time, there's room to grow. Silence. My parents exchanged confused looks. Jason didn't say anything, just stared down at his plate like it might give him answers. My dad finally cleared his throat. "We didn't realize you could offer jobs," he said, sounding almost embarrassed. "Jason has executive experience, surely he's qualified for something higher." And just like that, I felt the old defense mechanisms kicking in. Instead of getting emotional, I kept things professional. I reminded them that at TechVision, we hold everyone to the same high standards, no special treatment, no matter the connections. Based on Jason's actual experience, he fit best in an entry-level analyst role. There's room to grow, of course, but that growth depends on how he performs, not just what's on his resume. That honest reality hit my dad hard. You could see it in his face, like something he believed about his son was suddenly cracking. My mom, clearly anxious, just kept rearranging her silverware in silence. But then, out of nowhere, the real breakthrough came from Jason. "You know what, Dad? They're right," he said. "My resume's basically been a work of fiction for years. Madison didn't just hand me a job, she gave me a real chance, based on what I can actually do, not because we're related." Hearing him say that so openly shifted the whole vibe in the room. Something softened. "I've accepted the analyst role," he added. "I start next month." That moment opened the door for a deeper conversation, one we'd all avoided for way too long. My mom's earlier apology grew into something real. She admitted how differently we were treated growing up. "We always thought Jason needed more help," she said quietly, eyes filling with tears. "You just always seemed so strong." And just like that, the truth came out. In trying to support him, they'd unintentionally left me to fend for myself. They hadn't meant to be unfair, but that imbalance shaped us more than any of us wanted to admit. Dad sat there trying to process it all. He was defensive at first, clinging to old ideas of what parenting was supposed to look like. But eventually, even he let his guard down. "You've accomplished more than we ever imagined," he finally said to me. And clearly it wasn't because of us. That night we stayed up talking for hours. We didn't fix everything we couldn't. But for the first time in forever we were actually honest. And that honesty laid the groundwork for something better between us. When Jason officially started at TechVision, we kept it by the book. He reported to his department head, not to me. His performance was reviewed like anyone else's with no shortcuts, no family favors. Those first few months were tough for him. He was used to having a safety net, and now he had to face deadlines and real accountability. His first review came with feedback stuff he normally would have brushed off. But this time, he took it seriously. He actually started working on it. Our sibling relationship started to shift too. Slowly and awkwardly at first. We began meeting once a month for lunch, just the two of us outside the office, no pressure. That's where we finally found common ground in things like hiking and documentaries, things we never had the chance to explore together as kids. Watching him grow, little by little, became something I didn't expect, genuinely fulfilling. It wasn't entitlement that changed things, it was real effort. Jason started showing up, not just expecting help, but actually earning it. And over time, that began to shift everything within the family, though not always smoothly. My mom leaned into therapy. She worked hard to understand the ways she'd been enabling behaviors without even realizing it, and how that had affected all of us. My dad, well, his growth came slower. It took seeing actual changes like how Jason was handling life on his own for him to start opening up to a different perspective. And with time, their relationship with Jason changed too. They stopped constantly bailing him out with money. Instead, they began treating him like an adult, respecting his independence, even when it was tough. As for me, my healing followed its own path. I focused on learning to set healthy boundaries and letting go of old resentment that was only weighing me down. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for my peace. Funny enough, everything I went through personally started shaping how I showed up professionally too. One of the biggest things to come from that journey? A new company initiative I helped create at TechVision, something we called the Potential Pathways Program. The idea was simple. Give opportunities to incredibly capable people who didn't have traditional degrees but had real talent. That first round of the program included Amara Johnson. She worked in customer service, but the way she handled tough clients was nothing short of genius. No fancy diploma, but the heart, the mind, and the hustle? All there. With the right mentorship, she soared. Watching her succeed, it meant so much to me. It was like watching a door open that I knew had been shut too long for too many. Outside of work, my world began to grow again too. I built a friendship with Caroline Winters, our CFO at TechVision. Turns out we'd both been the responsible ones in our families. You know, the ones who always had to have it all together. We started running together on Thursday nights by the lake in Chicago. It became our safe space to talk, to laugh, to just be without all the pressure. It was Caroline who gently nudged me toward dating again. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself be vulnerable, not in a boardroom, but in my personal life. The moment that really brought it all full circle happened in the most unexpected way. I was mentoring a young software engineer, Zoe Rodriguez, brilliant, driven, but she kept missing out on important meetings because of transportation issues. It hit me hard. That feeling of having talent but being stuck because of circumstances? I knew it all too well. I told her a quick version of my own college story, how something as basic as not having a car had nearly thrown everything off track for me too. The next morning, I pitched a transportation support program to our exec team. It got approved fast. Just a few weeks later, Zoe became the first person to receive company-backed car financing. When she cried and thanked me, I felt something inside me finally release. All the pieces I'd been carrying quietly suddenly made sense. About 6 months into his analyst job, Jason invited me to lunch at this little Italian spot near Millennium Park. Halfway through our breadbasket, he looked up and said, "I got an offer. Meridian Technologies. It's a big step up, better pay too." The title alone caught his attention. He smiled and said, "Congrats," but then quickly added something that made me pause. "I'm turning down their offer." First, I was surprised, but then he explained, "The growth I see here, it's real. It's not about shiny titles or fancy business cards. It's about building something that actually matters." For the first time, he was creating something meaningful. Not because it was handed to him, but because he earned it. And that moment, it was a kind of healing we never saw coming. Looking back, The journey from betrayal to empowerment didn't just change our paths, it completely rewired how we understood success. It wasn't about comparing ourselves to others or chasing outside validation. It was about creating something valuable, something rooted in truth and integrity. I still remember when the car was sold behind my back. At the time it felt like a huge loss. But now I see it for what it really was. Fuel. Fuel that fired up a quiet determination inside me. What I built from that moment wasn't just a replacement for what I lost, it was a whole new version of strength. Unshakable self-reliance. The courage to define success on my terms. Have you ever been betrayed in a way that somehow led to your biggest breakthrough? If you've ever felt overlooked or pushed aside, but used that pain to build your own path, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. Your words might inspire someone else who's walking a similar road. If this message about breaking through family favoritism and turning pain into purpose spoke to you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and like this video. And let me know what part of this story hit you the hardest. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for spending this time with me. From betrayal to boardroom, this journey has been about one powerful truth. Sometimes the doors that close on you are exactly what you need to build a brand new road, one that's truly yours.